In Conversation with Terry Shepard, award-winning broadcaster, narrator, and author. A deep dive into the writer's craft with the artists and support systems who create the stories we love.
Thanks, Lisa. Gail Lukasik is a freelance writer, editor, college lecturer, and the author of the best-selling book, White Like Her, My Family's Story of Race and Racial Passing, which the Washington Post named one of the most inspiring stories of 2017. She's appeared on PBS's Genealogy Roadshow. She's been on BBC World News, NBC's Megyn Kelly Today. She is also a contributor to the Washington Post and the author of several mystery novels featuring her protagonist, Lee Gerard. Gail Lukasik, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Terry, for inviting me. I'm thrilled.
Your latest, which is coming out this month, is called What They Never Told Us. And the bit that I got from your PR person says that you explore the shocking family secrets that shattered the identities of ordinary people. Give us the 411 on What They Never Told Us.
It's true stories of people, ordinary people like you and me, who make these extraordinary discoveries about either their parentage and in some cases, their race or ethnicity that shatters their identities. And many cases, and actually most in the book, is through doing a DNA test, a consumer DNA test. This will be fun. Let's see what happens. We'll trace our family tree. And then some people found out that either one or both their parents weren't their parents. So I spent about 2 years interviewing people from across the nation, all over the place.
Were there commonalities in the stories you heard?
Yeah, there were. A lot of people expressed to me a sense of betrayal when they found out that their biological identity was not what they thought it was. And as I said, in some cases, people found out they weren't the race they thought they were. I have a particular story in mind. Bruce found out that he was raised in an Irish Catholic family, large family. I think there are 10 kids. And he said, even as a child, he always suspected there was something different about him and his physical appearance. He had very dark, curly hair. He had dark eyes. And he said, and I tanned really easily, but all my siblings were fair-skinned and blue-eyed and blonde. And he said, when I asked my dad about it, he just said, oh, it's a recessive gene in the family. That's what's going on. The problem for Bruce was that that was his home life, but when he went out into the world, he faced a lot of racial slurs because the outside world was seeing him differently. They called him a lot of nasty names, including the N-word, but he kept being told he was white. So that's one of the stories. And he doesn't find out the truth until he waits until after his parents are deceased. And he said, I'm going to put this to rest. I'm going to figure out the truth here. And so he does a commercial DNA test. And he discovers that what the outside world was telling him is true. He finds out that he's, I think it was 37% African heritage. And that starts his search to find out who his biological father was.
Did he find his biological father?
He did, but Bruce is in his 70s, so he found this out later in life. It took, I believe, 6 years to find who his biological father was. He was already deceased. And what the big shocker was for Bruce is Bruce was raised in a middle-class white family. His biological father was a black man, a laborer, living in Texas with, I don't even think he had a high school education. So Bruce is left with this question of how did this happen? How could this have happened? And everyone was deceased. He had no one to ask. And he's a pretty methodical guy. When he first got his DNA test, he thought, I'm going to test my DNA against first my brother to see how that worked out. it became, and he did it also with a sister, and he found out they all shared the same mother, but they all had different, he and his siblings had a different father. The siblings had the same one, but not him. So he's very methodical about figuring this out. He was raised a white person, a white guy, and now he's biracial.
In some ways, what they never told us is a sequel to White Like Her.
Yeah, I had my own journey in White Like Her, my family story of race and racial passing, when I discovered, and this goes pretty far back, 1995, I was between teaching jobs. And I thought, I'm going to do some research on my mother's father, which is my maternal grandfather from New Orleans. He has an unusual first name, Azima Frederick. We're talking 1995, right? There's no Ancestry.com I can go to. There's very little internet. So what I had to do the research is I drove to my family history center, which was near my house, and I started going through census records. Anyone who does genealogy knows that's one source we go to. And I had a really hard time finding him because when I always asked my mom about her dad, she would say, oh, I don't know when he was born. I don't know when he died. I have no photographs of him because my parents were divorced when I was 6. So I don't know much about him. I always thought that was a little strange. That's the story she told me. So I had a hard time finding him. I finally found the Frederick family, 1900 Louisiana census records. There they are. And he's about 2 or 3 years old. So I look at the Fredericks and I see behind every single name is the letter B. What's that for? So I go up to the head of that column and it's for race. So I thought, wait, does that mean black? So there was a woman who was helping us with the microfilm. So I went up to her and I said, I just want to check this out. I told the whole thing, race. She goes, oh yeah, that's for black. And then, this is so weird, she just lets loose with these racial slurs at me, using the N-word in relationship to a certain kind of candy that I'd never heard of. And I'm listening to this and I'm going, what is going on here? And then she calms down. She thinks it's funny. She's like joking, you know that candy? I don't know. And she ends up by saying something like, aren't you the one with all the slaves in your family? I don't know what she's talking about. I got out of there pretty quickly. It's January. I live in the Chicago area. It's cold. I sit in my car. I can't even drive home. I'm like stunned. And I'm not kidding you. I looked in the rearview mirror and I go, who am I? When I entered that place, I knew my identity. I was a white woman. When I left it, I didn't know what I was. I didn't know what my identity was. So that's how I connect with the people and what they never told us. They had the same experience I had. My parents are my parents, though. There's no question of that. I don't want to mislead anyone, but those are my parents. However, I did not know that my mother, as it turns out, was passing for white. And I did a lot of research. I was on PBS's Genealogy Roadshow. They did a lot of research. They had me on, and they showed me the 1940 census, which lists my mother and her sister. And on that census, they're both designated as Negro. So these are these tricky racial designations we use in the U.S. that I think in many cases are used to keep minorities down. And obviously my mother passed. She met my dad during World War II in the South. He was stationed in Mississippi before he shipped out. They met. He never had a clue. They didn't marry in the South when he was discharged. They came north to Ohio because you could not marry a white person, a person of color could not marry in certain states. At that time, they married in 44. They married in Ohio, but he didn't know. His family didn't know. I didn't know. My brother didn't know. So this is how I relate to the people in the book who've made, and I don't think unless you've experienced this kind of identity surprise, you're going to fully understand it. It's really disorienting for many reasons. First of all, you have to redefine who you are. You have to really think, long and hard about it. And the people in the book had to do the same thing. Everyone wants to find their biological parents, everyone that's in the book. Not everyone in life will, but in the book, everyone, because it's a part of their healing, a part of redefining and finding. I think of it almost as primitive, a tribal kind of thing. And there's another facet to this that I talk about in the book. A lot of these people express that they never felt they looked like anyone in their family. And the people that were adopted, I just felt like I was always looking to see if there's some kind of trait I shared with my mom, my dad, or somebody, and it didn't work. And then in some cases where the parent was still alive, the biological parent, and they find either the biological parent or maybe a half-sibling, they talk about how astounding it was for them to finally see someone that looked like them. Wow, we have the same eyes. I've never had that experience. Wow, that kind of, again, we're going back to tribal stuff, right? This is part of being part of a tribe. So this is how I relate to the people, and these are the stories. Yeah.
Why did you write the book?
Honestly, after I wrote White Like Her, I thought I was done with nonfiction. I had no intention whatsoever to write another book, a nonfiction book, because majority of my writing is mysteries. That's what I do, or poetry. So what happened after the book came out, White Like Her, and I was on the Megyn Kelly Today Show and all of that, I received, and I'm not exaggerating, an avalanche of emails from strangers. Found me on my website, and I just couldn't believe how many people, and these are people I don't know, and it's not just from the U.S. I'm talking Australia, South Africa, Canada, France, everywhere. And the majority wanted to tell me their family secret. They either want to tell me that, or they wanted to tell me how they felt about what my mom did. And it's all positive. It was mostly positive. There's some negative, but mostly positive that they admired what she did. So I started thinking, holy cow, these people need to share this. I'm a stranger, and they're sharing these secrets with me. And so it took a while for things to settle down, because there was a lot to do for White Like Her. And I started thinking, maybe I should tell other people's stories. Maybe we can learn so much from what these people have discovered and what they've gone through. So that was the reason I decided to take on this. And it was a huge project. Joke around. The book is divided into sections. There's the first section is race and ethnicity. The next one's adoption. And then the last one is artificial insemination, donor conception. I knew some things about adoption. I knew nothing about donor conception, artificial insemination. I had to do so much research. I had to learn so much. I joke now with people. I said, I don't think I've ever typed the word sperm so much in my entire life. Typing. Okay. There was a lot to learn. And a lot of these people had no clue that they were donor conceived. Yeah.
Why do you think people don't tell their kids the truth?
In some cases, because as I said, a lot of this happened mid-20th century, around that time. There was some shame associated with it, infertility, protecting the child, also integration of the child into the family, so not to feel that they don't belong. And that includes adoption as well. So adoption, donor conception, yeah. I think that's what it was about.
Gail Lukasik is our guest. Her latest book is What They Never Told Us, True Stories of Family Secrets and Hidden Identities Revealed. Her website is Gail, Lukasik.com. How did this change you?
It did change me. But to explain it, I have to tell you my process, because I think part of the reason it changed me very much so in terms of my emotions and writing this book was the way I did it. After COVID, we had Zoom. I did Zoom interviews, which I recorded, and many of them were up to 2 hours. And sometimes I would go back if I didn't get all my questions answered and interview some more. So what I would do is, as soon as the interview was over, as soon as possible, I would start transcribing. And I don't mean just typing out what they're saying. Yes, I did do that. But I mean transcribing, and the way I'm looking at you, what's your gesture as you're saying something? How does your tone of voice change? So I would put that in my notations. If someone was uncomfortable, I would note that. So in some respect, I was putting myself in their shoes, trying to interpret what they were saying and how they were saying and what it meant to them. So that became very draining, very difficult. And there were days when the stories were so hard to listen to that I had to take a break. There was one story, Brad Yule's story, where I just had to take a few days off. To watch another human being over and over again in pain is not easy. So I just said, you need to take a break. And then you have your own personal life, things that are going on in your own life. During the writing of this, my brother died, so I had personal things going on. And someone's telling me, as Brad did, one of the big regrets for him in not being able to know his biological mother was lost opportunities, lost time. And here I am losing my brother. He had a rather long illness, and it just got to be to the point for me personally where I had to take a break. We all have regrets. I only had one sibling, so it was very, very difficult. But people are sharing some pretty intimate things with me. And I think they trusted me because they understood that I had already been through something somewhat similar, and that I was willing to talk about it and be pretty open. When I wrote White Like Her, one of the things I told myself before I started writing is, you're going to have to be honest, because people will see right through it if you're hiding something or you're trying to gloss over something. In that book, I talk about my father's alcoholism and my parents' marriage and how my mother's passing and yet she's staying with him. And so that's very private, but I did it with compassion because my father served during World War II and came back pretty broken. Part of my research, when we write these kinds of books, we want to do a lot of research. I sent away for his military records. He entered the war. He was already in the Army when Pearl Harbor happened. So he was in for the duration in the South Pacific. He was in the Pacific Theater. Brutal. Just brutal. I wanted to get his military service records, but there had been a fire in St. Louis. They did send me something that I didn't expect. They sent me his medical records. And I saw my father in a different light than I had ever seen him before. It was heartbreaking. And I'm not giving a pass for the alcoholism. I'm just saying I understood it.
What happened?
I can just name the facts. He survived an airplane crash. He survived a shipwreck. He was wounded, but he recovered enough to stay in. They didn't take him out of the war. He was with the Engineer Corps, which means he went ahead and built the bridges under fire so the guys could cross. So it just did something to him. And when I read he was in a medical hospital and he told the doctor, I'm not the same man who went into the war. And you got to remember, this is World War II, so there's no PTSD. They called it shell shock. And there wasn't the kind of care that we have now. Go home, get over it, get on with your life.
How do you identify now?
I'll give you a little backup on this. For early on, when the book came out and I was doing a lot of talks, this was a question I could always count on. Someone in the audience, someone would ask me, so now that you know everything, how do you identify? And I thought it was a thoughtful answer. I said, I'm a white woman with Black ancestry. And I said that early on. This is an interesting story. I was giving a talk in St. Louis, and it was at a bookstore, and it was a mixed audience. And so a Black woman asked me that, and I gave that answer, and she said, "I'm just relieved because there's no other answer you could give. And I'm the head of the Black caucus here in St. Louis." And I thought, okay. So that was the answer I was giving. And then I went on the Megyn Kelly Today Show, and I gave that same answer. And then about, 10 days later, I get skewered on Amazon by a woman who identifies herself as African American, and she told Black people not to read my book. Even though she had not read it, she said because I was not honoring my Black ancestry properly. At that point, I thought a lot about it. She had a point. Okay, I'm not going to dismiss what she said. But I also realized that it doesn't matter what answer I gave, someone is going to be unhappy with me. They just are, no matter how I identify or what I say. So I have to be comfortable with how I racially identify. So it took me a number of years and thinking about it, doing research, thinking about, okay, let's just look at DNA. So DNA, I'm 7 to 9% African heritage. Let's look at ancestry in terms of what did my ancestors endured, and what, like her, I trace my mother's family back to the 1700s, Louisiana. I have an enslaved woman and what she endured, and all the way up until my mom, who grew up in Jim Crow South. I want to claim that. I want to claim that for my family. And eventually I came to the decision, yes, I know my appearance is so white looking. And no one, believe me, prior to writing this book, no one has ever asked me what my race was. There was never any question. But then I realized that I'm all these things. And so when I get up in front of an audience and I'm asked that from now on, since I made this decision, I say I'm mixed race. And I think I have every right to claim that. And when we did the 2020 census, that was the first time I claimed it.
What did that feel like?
Felt good. And now I say this in the new book. Now when I have to fill out a medical form, is if there isn't a box for other, I put my own box and check it. And if the doctor wants to ask me, I'm happy to explain.
Gail Lukasik is our guest. The website is Gail, Lukasik.com. Her newest book is What They Never Told Us, True Stories of Family Secrets and Hidden Identities Revealed. She became a national figure with her first major book, White Like Her, My Family's Story of Race and Racial Passing. You went to college to learn to be a poet. And when I was reading the advanced reader copy, I can sense poetry in your prose. How did your poetry background impact your writing?
First of all, I want to thank you for that. That is so nice of you to say that. Language is very important to me. And I started writing poetry pretty early in high school. It was a natural thing for me. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to be a poet. It just, okay, I had this kind of day. I'll sit in my room. I'll just write a poem. It was my way of putting both beauty in the world and also processing the world around me. So yeah, I kept writing poetry throughout my life, but I didn't really take it seriously because I don't know what I thought. I guess I just thought it was something I did. After I had my 2 kids, I decided I would go back to graduate school. But my intention was only to get a master's. That was my intention. I need a community of writers, and I was going to go to University of Illinois at Chicago. I knew they had a writing program. I was going to be in the poetry end of that, and I would have my community. I'd have other writers. I wouldn't feel so weird. I live in the suburbs. I was feeling strange. That's why I went back. I never had any intention of doing a PhD. I never had any intention of teaching. I just was going to do the master's, and then I'll see what happened. I did find my people. I did find my community, and then I got hooked. There's a lot to know. I don't know anything. I need to know more. And I was pretty excited. And I was an older student. I was in my late 30s to go to graduate school. It was wonderful. It was heady. It was great. I loved it. I loved every minute. And I wasn't particularly keen on teaching, but they won't let you in the PhD program if you don't teach. I had to get over that. I had to put my big girl pants on and teach. And I ended up actually enjoying it. I didn't think I would. Yeah, it just was pretty great. The leap from poetry, because I went from poetry to mystery writing, is a strange transition. And I'll tell you what happened. It's the weirdest thing. I got hooked. When I was in the PhD program, I just started reading a lot of mysteries, and a lot of women were writing mysteries suddenly. Sarah Paretsky, Marcia Mueller, some people like that. And I was like so excited because women were now claiming this genre in a big way. So I started reading, kept reading. It was just wonderful. So my son said to me one day, Mom, you're always reading these mysteries. Why don't you try writing one? And I thought, okay, why not? What have I got to lose? So I did. And I created Lee Gerard, and that's how she came about. And I don't know. I do things like this. I just do things on a lark. Why was I on PBS Roadshow? Because Genealogy Roadshow. My husband said, you ought to try it. I was like, okay.
How did you build Lee Gerard as a character?
Oh, that's an interesting story. When I started writing her, I was going through some health issues of my own. I don't want to get too personal, but yes, I'm okay. I'm fine. But I was going through, it became evident that I was high risk for breast cancer. I'm okay. That didn't happen. But it was so fearful for me that I thought, I'm going to create a character who actually has had it. And was her health issue that I created that for her. And she was from Chicago. She was teaching, and then she has this health crisis. And she goes to this place. If you're from the Midwest, York County, Wisconsin, we call it the Cape Cod of the Midwest. And it's, for me personally, it's my spiritual home. I just love going there. It just relaxes me. It's just a gorgeous place. So I thought, geez, if I'm going to do this, let's put it someplace that I love. And I get to go up there and do my research and have fun. And so I just put it all together. And yeah, that's how it came about.
What do you hope that people will take away from their experience with what they never told us?
I want people to understand the trauma of what happens when you find out you're not who you thought you were. That either you're not the race you thought you were, or these parent or one parent or both parents are not the parents you thought they were. I think we see the media does this a lot. I've noticed they will take a story like this because they like to sensationalize it. So-and-so just found out that the dad who raised him isn't his dad, and now he's reunited with the dad who's his biological father, and they're all getting along great. It's just such a happy story. But they're missing these big pieces in the middle, the psychological trauma that happens to a person when this happens. And I wanted to go deeper into that. And I wanted to look at, okay, what happens to the person's identity? How do they redefine themselves? Well, how do they heal? Because everyone in this book has made an attempt to heal, which I think is very important. And they all do it in their own way. And part of the healing is finding their biological roots, the people they came from biologically. So that's one thing. The other thing, I talk about this in the book, because I don't think it's fair, to throw the parents under the bus. This happened, these secrets were kept in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, 70s, different time, different era, when to be an unmarried woman was a stigma. So a lot of times the baby was given up. We call it relinquished for adoption. Infertility, there was shame associated with it. So parents made decisions based on the time period that they lived in, and they thought they were protecting their child. So I don't throw anyone under the bus. I want to understand that. But I also think if you're a parent now who's keeping a secret about your child's biological identity, I don't give advice. I just say, think about it. Think about if they one day decide to do a DNA test and they get the shock of their lifetime. Wouldn't it be better to talk to them now so that you get to tell your side of the story? Totally up to them. Also, I think people should come away with the fact that the holidays are a great time when people are buying these DNA kits because they're on sale. Like Ancestry, MyHeritage, they all are putting them on sale. Oh, what a great experience. Find your roots and all this. Never thinking it could open doors you may not want to open. Just think about it. Be prepared that when you spit in that tube, you may get a result you're not expecting. That's all. I think that's things to think about. Takeaways.
A fascinating conversation with Gail Lukasik. The book that's coming out is What They Never Told Us, True Stories of Family Secrets and Hidden Identities Revealed. We highly recommend that when you purchase that book, you also buy White Like Her, My Family's Story of Race and Racial Passing. And to think about that person that may be hiding in your DNA and about how that changes your outlook when you look at someone else, because they may not be the person that you think they are. Gail Lukasik, thanks for the conversation.
Thank you so much, Terry. It was very enjoyable.
In Conversation with Terry Shepard is a copyrighted presentation. All rights reserved. I'm Lisa Davis. Join Terry Shepard next time in Conversation.